Hey, how's it going? Sean here with The Average Angler. Today we're going to talk about the bait casting reel. And for those of you who want to get your first bait casting reel, we'll go over some fundamentals, some simple do's and don'ts to help you make that a quicker and more pleasant experience. Okay, so we want to get our first bait caster and we want this to go well. Bait casters are actually fairly simple to use. Buying a halfway decent bait casting reel is a big key. Now we'll go over some price points here in a bit and some that I might recommend as a first bait caster and why. My experience with the cheap bait casters, less expensive, under $100 for example, okay, has not been very good. And even as an experienced fisherman, they're not always the easiest thing to throw when you add conditions in like throwing into the wind or throwing light baits. It's just something the lesser expensive bait casters aren't really in tune to doing. Now, a very established fisherman might be able to make it work, but it's not the best, and there are reels specifically for those applications. So we're going to go over just general bait caster. We want to get our first bait caster. We want to use it to fish a variety of techniques. So I am going to suggest the $100 price point and up, okay? I've got a list of quite a few here that I would recommend, and I'll put the details down in the description with a link so you all can take a look at these if you're interested. I don't get anything for it. I'm just trying to help you out and help you learn, not make the same mistakes I did. I bought a few inexpensive reels, and man, let me tell you, it was a nightmare going through line, having to re-spool because I blow up reels so bad. Wasn't a lot of fun. Eventually I purchased a Daiwa 103, and I think I also had some Shimano Curados at the time. These were the big green 200s. Man, things have come a long way since then. Anyway, we can look at reels. Actually, there's one at $70. The rest of these are over $100, but we kind of kept it in that price point. Now, one thing I will suggest as a general rule of thumb, if you will, okay, maybe the best way to learn is just on a basic setup. Say a 6-foot, medium heavy, spooled up with some Berkeley big game or something equivalent, 15-pound test. So let's say a half-ounce jig or maybe a quarter to 3/8 Texas rig for flipping and pitching or casting out in the lake and retrieving back. This is probably the easiest thing to start with. Blades, things that can catch the wind, can sometimes add a little extra challenge to it. I don't think it will once you get used to it, but in the beginning, the blades on a spinnerbait can grab the wind, on a buzzbait can grab the wind, and so forth and so on. So when you first start, I'd suggest casting with the wind if it's a windy day, or on days that aren't windy. And the main thing is try not to overcast. Keep it nice and simple. The cast will get further and further as you get more comfortable. And with a quality reel, it's just going to make it easier. So let's take a look at, say we have our reel, it's spooled up with line, we're on our rod, and we're going to adjust the reel to set it up so that we can start casting. Okay, so now we have our reel, it's on our rod, we're spooled up with 15-pound. I use big game, you can use whatever you like. I just suggest a typical monofilament because it's less expensive, and that way if you do blow up the reel, it's not costing you a lot of money. So once you learn, go ahead and put on whatever you want. And I brought in a prop just because this is going to help you see what I'm doing here. Okay, first of all, on your reel, I suggest one with a tensioner knob, which is here. This puts tension on the spool. And then the magnets. This will help slow your spool down. This is a finer adjustment. This is a bigger adjustment. And the reels I'll be suggesting, they're all going to include those two features. Okay, so here's my little prop. There we go. So what you want to do is use the tensioner knob, and you're going to let it fall like this. And you're going to adjust that tensioner knob tighter and tighter so that when it gets to the ground, your spool stops. Okay, so your spool stops spinning. Okay, so reel it up. Let it fall. And when it stops, the reel stops spinning. You have no overrun. See, I'm pulling line out. You have no overrun here once it hits the ground. So the weight's off, your spool's not spinning. And I would suggest setting the magnets here. This is a Daiwa Tatula SV T-wing. And the magnets go from 0 to 20. I'm gonna say, let's go 18, okay? That's gonna help you not overspin the reel. The magnets will help keep the reel spin under control. It's not completely foolproof, but it does help, and that's why I suggest using one of these. I still do. I still want these fine adjustments because on those days when it's windy out or you're throwing different weight baits, it just really helps to go from a 1/4 ounce to a whopper plopper or something that's very easy to throw, okay? So that's setting up the reel and getting ready to cast. Next thing you're gonna wanna do, you can either go to a school, to a park, somewhere where you have a grass field, or you can go to a pond or a lake near you if you're close by. But go out and start making some easy casts, okay? Then give a little bit more to it, but just all you want to do is let the rod load and then kind of whip it out, okay? Whip it out there, not try to overthrow it, just kind of nice, easy cast. As you get comfortable with that, you do a few, start to back off on the magnet a little bit. Or you can do the tensioner a little bit. Let's start with the magnet first, and then we'll get into loosening up the tensioner. So do the magnet till you get down to about, say, 4 or 6, and then it's going to be time to loosen up your tensioner knob. Okay? So if you loosen this tensioner knob, and this is going to get more into your optimal casting, you loosen this up. Okay, you hear that? That's side-to-side movement in the spool. So I'm going to go tighten that tensioner back up. I loosened it to get that. I'm going to tighten it back up to where I take that almost all the way out of it. There we go. Then put my magnets back to 16. I'll make a cast, see how it does, and then I can loosen it up. You may want to make a few casts before. Okay, so I've compiled a list of reels that I would suggest, mainly from 3 of the bigger manufacturers, Daiwa, Luz, and Shimano. Your preference, your choice, everybody has their own favorites, their own likes, dislikes, whatever. I'm a Daiwa guy, I prefer the Daiwas. So there's a Daiwa Fuego CT, 110 bucks. It's actually a pretty darn good reel. And then of course the Tatula line go from 140 on up to a couple $100, I think. There is one sub $100 reel that I would recommend if you just can't afford the other ones. and that's the Daiwa CC80. They list at $70. Okay. Lew's has a speed spool LFS, $99.99. I had a buddy, that's what he used. He loved it. I used his a couple of times. It's a good reel, and it has all the adjustments you need to optimize your casting. As far as Shimano goes, they have the SLX also in that $100 price range. They have the SLX in many different options. If you can do it and you want Shimano SLX MGL is my recommendation. It's 150 bucks. Now, I made the mistake of buying cheap reels when I was trying to learn, and it was miserable. I eventually hung it up and didn't want to mess with it for a while. And then I ended up getting an older Daiwa 103, and I was like, man, this is not hard. This is easy. But it was hard with the other one. It just was. And I was using a rod that I didn't know any better about. It was an ugly Steck. It was flimsy as hell, and it was just really hard to control a good cast. So, you know, there's something to spending a little bit of money and getting a decent setup, because it does make a difference. So if you're having a tough time with someone cheap, don't get down on yourself. Try to get something, you know, a little bit better, and then give it a try. And I actually have a couple Ardent reels from when I was sponsored by Ardent that are pretty decent, and I will give them away. If somebody can't afford it and wants to get one, shoot me a comment and we will work something out. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. It'll help me grow the channel. We'll be getting some better content here. I'm learning. I'm an old guy trying to learn some new tricks here, but I have a lot of experience fishing. Yeah. All right, I think that's all we got. Questions, comments, please leave them below. I'll get back to you. I will link these reels in the description along with the line that I suggest. And it's just a cost-effective thing, man. Tight lines, peace out.